Hey, thanks for joining us. It's your Around the Maritime podcast for the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. And coming up on episode one of season two, Gordy Dwyer, the head coach, general manager of the Newfoundland Regiment, Jeremy Boucher, joins me as we tee up the opening week of the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. Let's drop the puck. Season two on the podcast. Jeremy, my friend, welcome back. Happy fall. How was the summer?
Summer was great, Mavs. It's great to be back in everyone's living rooms, or phones, or tablets, or whichever device you're watching us on. And yeah, short summer if you're a hockey fan. I think we're looking at just under 110 days from the Memorial Cup final to puck drop Thursday night in Newfoundland, and uh, tried to get as much golf as I could have got in the summer. Got one round in, so that was about as much golf as I could
Hey,
fit into my schedule for this past summer.
you do have the newborn, but there is fall golf. Fall golf is great. Fall golf
Mhm.
is fantastic. The only problem is you lose the ball in the leaves quite a bit. Um, it's going to be a big night at coming up the Avenir Center. Banner raising. How excited are you for that? And how excited are you for the start of the year?
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty special night. The talk around town is that Moncton always goes all outs for their home opener, and I'm expecting nothing different this year, given the difference between previous years, where we're actually going to have the Jules Corto Trophy in the building, raising a banner. It's going to be a really special night, and uh, tickets aren't even on sale yet for that home opener, but it's going to sell out really quick.
Well, I know it should be a sellout at the Mary Brown Center. It's the first game for the Newfoundland Regiment, and they've got back to back against the Moncton Wildcats, defending league champion. I had a chance to chat with Gordy Dwire. You'll hear that conversation coming up later. But I have Jeremy, I've got very high hopes for the Newfoundland Regiment. I think that what they've built in Acadie Bathurst over the last couple of years is a solid core that's going over to Newfoundland. They've got a lot of nice pieces there. They've got some great goaltending, and they've uh, they've built in got an automatic face of the franchise in Ben Vitch.
Yeah, 100%. Bringing over Dawson Sharkey, Pilgrim Edwards, Noah LeBears, Jamil Perrin, Mika Sven Vegmanags as their goalie. Gordy Dwyer as their head coach. There's not a lot of turnover with Newfoundland this year, so you know they could make a case for being a contender in their first year of existence, which that's a pretty good thing to do. But they're also going to be a very young team with Ben Veach and Quinn Norman, and but props to Ben Veach. They had a little bit of a fundraiser for the forest fire victims in Newfoundland over the weekend, and well, guess who won hardest shot in the regiment? 16-year-old Ben Veach, almost clocking 90 miles an hour with a slap shot. So, yeah, if you see that guy teeing up the puck on the ice, you might want to get in the way, or for the sake of maybe you're an injury, move out of the way.
Well, I heard at U17 camp they were bouncing off them, so that is a good sign with Ben Vitch. Taking a look at the Eastlink trio of teams with Halifax, Cape Breton, and Charlottetown. Charlottetown, they've got a great core there. They've built it, and I think their forwards are going to take the next step. Donald Hickey as well in between the pipes. It's his net now. Excited to see what happens with that Jim Holton led team. The Halifax Mooseheads, so many returners from last year and their big upset from the first round over Drummondville. But there's some questions in that Owen Bresson as well as Nicholas Gillum Circa. They're going to be sharing the duties. I'm excited to see what comes out of those young goaltenders. And in Cape Breton is going to be it's a very young team. There's a lot of firepower that has left the nest. It's going to be it's going to be a season in Cape Breton that's going to require a bit of patience.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like in Charlottetown, it's been so long since they've gotten out of the first round of the playoffs, and I think this is a season where they break the streak, and making the acquisition, bringing in the Peddle brothers, Pittsburgh Penguins pick Brady, bringing in Tyler Peddle from the Sea Dogs. That's going to bring immediate chemistry to their lineup, and with Jim Holton behind the bench, what they say. They said it was the most competitive training camp they've seen in many years. So that says a lot about what the expectations are on PEI for this season. And looking at Halifax, still going to be a young team, but they got a strong leadership core led by Owen Phillips. But yeah, like you said, I think goaltending's maybe their question mark there. And they last time I checked, they still got a spot for a 20-year-old. So that's a file to keep an eye on in Moose Country. And yeah, you're right with Sydney. With the Eagles, a lot of offensive turnover. No Squires, no Henneberry, no Newcomb, no Patterson, no Malota, and that's it's going to be a team that they might struggle to put the puck in the net, but with you still have Thomas Ladwell back there, they still got Will Murphy back there. They've got Samuel Kupik that they got in the Malota trade from Blainville. It's an experienced decor, so that could very well save them on many nights this season.
And then we take a look at the St. John Sea Dogs, and Sea Dogs again. It's going to be a question of what the imports that they've brought in, not just from Europe but from the States, and how they've tinkered that roster to see if they can get themselves out of last place of the Maritime Division and start moving that rebuild forward.
Yeah, all eyes on Alexi Joseph. The first overall pick in the Q draft. He's been highly touted for a couple of seasons, and he's fortunate to be in St. John, where I think he's going to be in a good spot with Travis Crickard as behind the bench, and a lot of expectations with Cameron Chartrand as well, who was just named to the QMJHL prospects game in Sherbrooke the last week of October. So that's still a young team. But they still have some weapons in that lineup. William Ured, Jake, Dylan Rossi, Zach Morin. These are guys that are going into their second years in the league, and they're expected to contribute to really help put some more pucks in the net for St. John. And so I think that's a team that when all said's done, you're probably looking at maybe a team that definitely makes the playoffs and could potentially push for maybe a first round upset.
That gives us a chance to take a look at last year's standings, and Jeremy, we'll have a chance to take a second. We take a look at the standings on the screen. Moncton had 108 points, Cape Breton 75. The Newfoundland Acadie Bathurst had 69, Islanders 65, Mooseheads 48, and the Sea Dogs with 42. I'll ask you, who do you think is going to have the biggest point differential in their standings when we look at the end of the Maritime Division this season?
Yeah, so with respect to to Cape Breton, I think there's going to be a bit of a drop off there with the Eagles. If it'll be a pleasant surprise if they're up there with 75 points. But I think other than Cape Breton, you're probably looking at, and I'll make the case for Moncton as well. You're probably seeing Charlottetown, Halifax, St. John, of course. Bathurst is with Newfoundland now. All those teams making improvements on their point totals from last season, but definitely I think you'll see Cape Breton drop off, and I don't think you'll see a season like Moncton had last season. Just a phenomenal run that they went on, and I think if they can crack the 90 point mark in Moncton, that's I would call that a very successful season.
For me, the two teams that intrigue me the most out of the Maritimes division that are looking to swing things the right way. I look at Newfoundland. Again, I believe what Gordy Dwyer has built over there, and with what the support they're going to have in that community, and trying to make a splash here in their first season in St. John's. I think you're going to see that team be fighting for the top of this division with the Moncton Wildcats. And I think it's going to be neck and neck between Acadie or between Newfoundland and Moncton. Sorry, saw it on the screen and it threw me off. Sorry there to the Chalet Lightning. Is that how I say it? The Chalet?
Chalor Lightning.
Chalor. Sorry, Chalor. Yes, the Chalor Lightning now of the Maritime Hockey League. The again, I look at the Halifax Mooseheads. 48 points last year, but you see 10 of those losses in extra time.
Yeah.
That's a very young team. You turn those bounces into wins, and all of a sudden they've moved up the rankings. They've got a lot more experience, but you cannot take away from the fact that they had Mathis Rousseau, who was Team Canada goaltender, and then Jacob Steinman, who ended up winning the CHL goalie of the year. You take those two guys out there, and now you put in two young goalies in Owen and Nick. Hey, golden opportunity for those two guys to grab the brass ring. Looking forward to seeing what happens with Moose Country this year to see the swing they go from 48. I see that maybe being a 70-point season.
Yeah, 100%. And Brad McKenzie finally getting his chance, behind the bench with the I would call it unexpected departure of Andrew Lord. So good on Brad. This is a guy that's been kind of waiting in the wings for a few years now, and he's finally getting his opportunity and uh, made the right move off the bat. Putting the C on Owen Phillips' jersey.
Yeah, it's deja vu all over again for the Halifax Mooseheads in their search for a new head coach. But they went inside. Brad McKenzie's going to have the shot at that, and I'm excited to see him get his first role in the HC spot. And hey, good on Andrew Lord for finding a spot up in the American Hockey League and being able to parlay the experience and what he did in Halifax to advance his career. Best of luck to him moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. And same goes for Louis Robitaille and Matt Anthony, who took their
Yes.
talents to Russia, right? So it's doesn't matter where. If you have a job in hockey, there's ample opportunities out there. That's and that's just proof right there.
Um, your Moncton Wildcats, buddy. They're sitting right now eighth in the CHL top 10. It hasn't been a game played yet, but these top 10 rankings come out. I know a friend of ours, Dan Robertson, will take a look at that top 10, say irrelevant, but it is talking points for us in this media. Blainville sitting at number one in the country. The Armada have taken big swings over the last couple of years, and they've had some misses. Is this where they finally make that contact and send the ball over the wall, much like my Milwaukee Brewers, and hit that big home run?
You hope so. It's considering what they've paid to bring in a guy like Spencer Gill and Bill Zonin and Jakub Malota. That's pretty much empty in the cupboards. That's you can't get more bare than that. But it's if they're clearly all in, and that's I don't think the job is done. I think they're probably you're going to see them look at a couple of guys that during the holiday trade period to improve that roster. It really is an unfortunate market as well, because all indications are the Montreal Canadiens will be a playoff team this year. The Laval Rocket will be very good as well. So they're kind of in that middle. They're I believe there was a home game in the playoffs or where I think Montreal was playing on the same night and they virtually had almost no anybody in the crowd. It was a shame. So you really hope that this season is you get that buy-in from the community to really put some butts in the seats because they really need it. Like it's a tough market when you've got two pro sports hockey teams, within an hour of Blainville. That's tough. So they've really got to put an emphasis on winning, and by all indications is they're going for it this year.
Other Q team there, Chicoutimi, and I felt like the Sags were going to take that step last year, but look, they've built, and I could see they're going to be a very tough out in the East. Although in the second round, everything gets scrambled up, and it's actually I think it's nice to see that come into the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League because last year we were lamenting about how in the Eastern Division there was five teams that were going to go into that buzzsaw, and two of them were going to be eliminated in that second round. Good on the league to notice that and decide to make that switch for that second round of the playoffs, where it is everybody reseeds. Doesn't matter the divisions at that point.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was tough to see good teams go out early, and you never want to see that. These are teams that they want to win, and to go out in the first round, second round, that hurts, and it just makes for a long off season. And so good on yeah, you're right. Good on the league for changing things up. But this is Chicoutimi's year. right? This is a year I think they've zeroed in on for 2 or 3 seasons now. Maxime Massé is going to be in his last year of eligibility here, and he's a guy he came into the league pretty highly touted, and I don't think he's reached his potential yet. So I'm expecting him to have a big breakout season for Chicoutimi this season.
Well, Jeremy, we've got ourselves a couple facts and figures. 19 players from the Q drafted in the NHL. Both 35 Americans on the rosters, American-born players on the Q rosters to start the season, and 62 players from the Q currently at NHL camps. How big is the American influence going to be on the Q this year?
Look, you're seeing it. I don't think there's been a team in the entire CHL that has taken advantage of the NCAA rule change more than the Moncton Wildcats. They were able to sign Jacoby Wiener, who was a draft pick of theirs, free agent Ryan Chudzinski, Tommy Blyle on D. Just to name a few. Like this team is. I think a lot of people were expecting them to maybe rebuild, but you have a team celebration with the Gilles Courteau Trophy in early June, and on the same day you're announcing that Ryan Chudzinski is signed, who was a top player, arguably a top player in U.S. prep hockey last year. So, and then they go and get two monstrous defensemen in the Euro draft. One 6'4", and the other, the kids at home will like when I say this, 6'7", 6'7" Otto Magnuson, right? So that was a good indication where we want to win again here in Moncton, and so the American influence is big. It's changing a lot. You're going to see teams who were expecting to rebuild to quickly turn things around, and it's been huge. But at the same time, we've lost players as well. So a Justin Poirier not in the league for his 19-year-old season hurts. That's going to hurt Baie-Comeau. But good on him for kind of capitalizing on a rule change and going off to UMaine.
Well, a couple big dates of note coming up here in the queue. It's a prospect game coming up October 21st in Sherbrooke. That is a top 40 prospects from the Q all gathering for a game there. Excited to see that as an initiative from the league. Of course, the OHL and Q is going to have some interleague play where Gatineau's taking on Ottawa and Rouen-Noranda is taking on Sudbury. But the big news on our side is it was announced today, June 5th and 6th. The Q draft will be in Halifax. Had the opportunity to do the last 5 drafts with Eastlink, and I hope we're in the building and bringing you all the action and all the excitement from the draft floor at the Scotiabank Center for June 5th and 6th of the Q draft brought to you by Fenplast. And let me tell you something, doing it virtually is fun. Being able to watch Sylvain Couturier run around from table to table, wheel it and deal it in person, you want to be able to see that. Good on the Simons to bring that to Scotiabank Center. I know the tattoo is given a couple dates for it, so it's finally happened. The draft is coming to Halifax.
Yeah, and that's I don't think they've had it in Halifax before, right? So it's what 30 years in the making,
This is the
and
first time. Yep.
yeah, and I did my research today, and looks like the hotels in Halifax are quickly benefiting from that based on the prices they have for that weekend. So I'll be in the building, but I'll quote Tiger King: "I'll never financially recover from this."
Let me tell you, just a little secret, little secret. It ain't just that weekend they're benefiting from. It's those rates, my goodness. Anyways, at this rate, we got to get ready for puck drop. Jeremy, thanks for taking some time. And
Hey, no
I've
pleasure.
got Gordy Dwyer on the other side of this break. Here it is the Around the Maritime podcast, the QMJHL. Jeremy's on his way to the Avenir Center to see a banner get raised to the Raptors. Hey, so this is where I want to talk about the perfect pair, which is, perfect pair on the blue line is your top defensive pairing, but the perfect pair with Eastlink is unlimited mobile and a gig internet for 99 a month. That's right, Eastlink. Yeah, you got to check that out, eastlink.ca. 1-888-345-1111, or check into one of the stores today to ensure that you get the perfect pair. And hey, maybe this season on the Around the Maritimes podcast, we'll highlight a perfect pair of defensemen to go along with this read. We'll just find the best defensive pairing of the week or the 2 weeks, and then compare them to our $99 a month unlimited mobile and gig internet deal with Eastlink. And don't forget to add that TV in there as well. Don't want to miss Friday night hockey. Joining us right now on the Around the Maritimes podcast, I know it's Atlantic Canadian team Newfoundland, but again, Around the Maritimes, the head coach and general manager, Gordie Dwyer. Gordy, it is opening week for the Newfoundland Regiment. You must be chomping at the bit. What's the emotion like going into this, the week one inaugural season of the regiment?
Well, well. First of all, great to be on the show here, Mavs, and we're really excited about the start of the hockey season here. It's been a real real exciting time for us to join the community here in St. John's, and from the start of training camp, it's been a real competitive group with our team in Fredericton, and then making the trip over to St. John's has been great. So not only are we excited about hitting the ice on Thursday night against the Moncton Wildcats, but we've been thrilled to be welcomed in with open arms here in the community.
This you come out of Fredericton, and again, it was a off season unlike any other. I'll get into that, but what do you like? What do you like about your group right now and the 18 you have in the room?
Well, we definitely like the pace that we have and the pace that we're able to play with. And I think during training camp, during our exhibition season, even though it was short, we were able to play to that identity. And you look at the balance of our group. You take the 16-year-olds that are coming into the league, and they're well insulated with some veteran players, and our core group of players who are 2 or 3 years into their junior careers. So the additions to our hockey team in the off season really helped, but ultimately we're able to play to that identity, and our team identity is that we play hard, we play fast, and I think it's an exciting brand of hockey for the fans here in St. John's.
A lot of expectations going into the season for the regiment, and you start things off with the defending league champs. How much of a measuring stick is that for this team?
Well, I think they've obviously set the bar last season, and you look at the team that they're going to have, and they're going to ice again this year. It's going to be one of the top teams in the league, so it's a really good challenge for us. We're looking forward to it. Obviously, playing in front of our home fans and home crowd, there's lots to be really excited and learn from on that side of it. So our young players are going to get that opportunity. Our veterans are going to get a chance to impress the crowd here at home. So going up against the champs is it's a great way to start for our hockey team.
Taking the head coach hat off and putting on the general manager hat, this has been a weird offseason again, and basically free agent frenzy because you had kids from the States and kids from other leagues trying to get into this queue. What was it like for you dealing with that aspect this offseason?
Well, again, it was a different challenge this year in the off season from a manager's perspective. You look at with the the borders changing last year and the opportunity for the American players or for the Canadian players to actually join our league. So we feel like we were able to recruit a lot of the top talent that was available out there. You look at the draft capital that we've been able to build over the last few seasons and be able to execute during our draft. The way that things played out for us, we were really thrilled about the outcome there. And you look at the trade market this summer, there wasn't a whole lot available in the trade market. So for us to be able to pull the trigger on Justin LaRose or Oliver Sampson, there were huge additions to our lineup. So, or Dominic Pilote for that matter. So I like the work that we were able to accomplish as a team, to help our hockey team this year. But it was a different off season, and trade speculation. Some of the free agents really kind of muddied the water a little bit, but ultimately we were responsible to put the best team on the ice that we can for our team, and I'm happy with the results in the off season, and now it's time to hit the ice.
When it came to the when it came to the draft, fifth overall, you go up and you're selecting Benvich, and this is a kid that's just down the road. It's serendipitous for him to be from St. John's and going to be able to play in his hometown. What have you liked with Ben's game so far?
Well, I mean, we were thrilled with being able to select Ben at that range. So, regardless if we were headed to St. John's or we were back in Bathurst or I was working for any other club, he definitely would have been a target for us. Um, he's a big body. He shoots the puck extremely well. He just won our hardest shot competition here last week in front of our home fans. With a shot around 90 miles an hour for a 15-year-old kid's pretty impressive. So he's big body, plays the game the right way. He plays it, he's physical. He's got touch around the net, and, he's got great hockey sense. So, for us, he's a big piece of the future. And just the way that it played out with him being a hometown kid here in St. John's, it's really a recipe for success for him.
Did yourself or the ownership group knew that he had the Newfoundland flag stitched into the inseam of his jacket?
No, that was a surprise for everybody, but a nice touch from him. I'm sure he had a little help from whether it was his parents or his agent on that side of it. But it was a great touch, and for us to be able to draft him, at the draft, we're pretty happy with the results of that. So obviously, we feel like he's going to have a bright career at this level and possibly beyond. So it's really our job to kind of get him, settled into his opportunity here in St. John's, and then really drive his development.
Well, and then you go up there and Quinn Norman's next, and he's from just down the bay as well. So another Newfoundlander. What have you liked out of Quinn?
Well, Quinn's probably one of the most dynamic skaters in the draft, if not, in his whole age class across the nation. So I know that he performed extremely well at the under-17s with Hockey Canada. He's been such a bright spot for us in the back end. Someone who's only 15 years old, probably the youngest player in the draft, the youngest player in the league this year, and he's fit right in. He competes hard. He skates extremely well. His mobility is excellent, and not only that, but his hockey sense and how he wants to play and how he wants to affect play, whether it's offensively, defending. He's been a real bright spot, and he's another local kid and a top prospect for us who's got great potential.
We take a look at the potential of the regiment. What gives you optimism that this second time will be a charm for hockey in Newfoundland?
Well, it starts with Glenn Stanford. Glenn Stanford's the president of the hockey team. He's got over 35 years of experience, whether it's in the American Hockey League and in pro hockey, and, definitely well connected. So for him to bring hockey back to Newfoundland, and then the strength of ownership that we have, the families that are involved with our hockey team, they've been extremely generous. They've really put the emphasis on making sure that our team is well looked after here in St. John's, and not just they're not just operating a hockey team. It's really about the impact that we have in the community, and we sense that already. So there's a responsibility from our end to put on a good product on the ice, but there's a responsibility for us and a real opportunity for our players to be integrated into the community here. So I think that's the win-win. So we're going to have a competitive team. The additions of LaRose, top players like LaRose, Sharkey, Danacek, some of those players that are coming in, up front, we feel like those guys are going to be able to take the next step. And then we've got the next players waiting in the wings. You think about the Belangers, the Gogans, the Vitch, Marmolax, these type of players up front, Saint Gelais. We're happy with our group here, and obviously there's a lot of development to be had, but where we're at, day one of the regiment, we're excited where we're going to start, and the support of our fans and our ownership is, we're excited about the possibilities here.
You've got such a great base coming over from Acadie Bathurst as well, and you bring up Dawson Sharkey. What was it that you saw out of him, and you think that the big club saw out of him last year to propel him to being selected in the draft?
Well, he's a kid from a small town in Prince Edward Island. I was lucky enough to be able to spend time around him as a minor hockey player, and always felt that his offensive instincts were always there. But not only that, but he's definitely a physical player, and he plays with a ton of jam and grit. So that combination of offense, that combination of physicality and grittiness to his game, as he continues to improve with opportunity, is something that we took notice of early. We were able to make that trade with Quebec, and then for him to be able to come in full marks to Dawson for really believing in that opportunity and making the most of it, and then for Dallas to be able to believe in him and select him in the draft. So he's one of these players that comes from a little bit, he wasn't as polished as some of the other players, but his drive and his commitment to getting better, the way that he plays the game, how physical he is, how involved he is, and how he wants to affect the game offensively, I think it was something that the Dallas Stars, took notice in and selected him in the draft.
You talk about again and making the most of opportunities. There's going to be a lot of kids that the opportunity is now here for them to play in the queue. Go back to 1994. What was the nerves like for you coming into your first game in the league with the Hall Olympic?
Yeah, well, we're going back a ways now, but I still remember those days fondly. It's funny how time flies, but ultimately, when you make memories, and junior hockey's memorable for all the players and coaches and people that are involved with it, the fans, and I look back at my first year with the Hall Olympics back in the day, and right from the start of training camp with Bob Mongrain, who was our coach, Charlie Henry was our GM. Claude Julien was our assistant coach, and just the group of players that we had. We had 14 rookies on our team that year. We had a guy named Jose Theodore in the net, Sebastian Borlo, our top forward, and we had a tough physical team, and we were able to win the Gilles Courteau Trophy that year as the President's Cup. So it was a great team to be part of. Still lots of great friends from that hockey team, and I remember those days fondly.
It's your rookie season. You capture the title and get a chance to go to the Memorial Cup. Uh, is it something that you're able to tell kids throughout your coaching career that hey, the opportunity to lift that trophy does not come easy, and it is very hard to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we start the season, we're not necessarily focused on that. That'll be come later in the season, but we're really focused on our daily development, on what we have to do to drive performance and development. Here with our group. So, sometimes you get a chance to share some of the old war stories with the players, but it's really about them. So we make it about them. We've got some coaches that are really qualified coaches and guys that really want to help the hockey team and really drive development. So we spend as much time as possible talking about the player and talking about their experiences, and obviously trying to put the best product on the ice.
Been coaching in the league since 2013. You've had some stints over in Russia and Switzerland. We'll get into the pro stuff in a bit, but I'd love your thought. What's been the biggest change in developing players over this decade and a half?
Well, I believe now our responsibility at this level is to really help drive development, and driving development is not just a term that we use. It's we've been fortunate enough here with the regiment to bring in a whole sports science department, and the way that hockey's going now, we feel that not only there's an on ice component to it, but there's an off ice component to it. So there's some metrics that are involved, and we want to see fitness levels from younger players, and then obviously that's going to translate to performance on the ice. So. I think the development piece is huge. Junior hockey is just a step now. It's just the start of some players' careers, where before players would come in and they would age out of junior hockey, and there were limited opportunities after. But now if you play major junior hockey, there's great opportunity after, whether it's with Canadian universities, the NCAA that we've talked about, or pro hockey. So there's great opportunity for players to continue on. So it's really our job to really help drive development here for our players. And I think that's one of the biggest changes in junior hockey.
We talk pro hockey, and just to go to your playing career, it was Tampa Bay, New York, Montreal, and in the show. Your first game in the league. What's going through your mind, and what do you remember from that moment, especially here again, opening week? We're going into the war stories here, Gordy.
Well, it's I look at my first game, and I remember getting traded from at that point from the Montreal Canadiens, and I was in the American Hockey League for a bit of that season to start the year, and just wasn't really getting an opportunity to hit the ice with a real deep group. And I remember I got a phone call from Rick Dudley, and Rick Dudley made the trade for me to go to Tampa. And I started in Detroit with the Detroit Vipers of the IHL, and You look back at the IHL days, there were some pretty neat cities, some really good teams to be part of. So as a young player, I was thrilled about going to Detroit. So when I got the call at Tampa, I was pretty excited as well. So I remember my first game, we were playing against the Carolina Hurricanes. Some players like Paul Coffey and Kevin Hatcher were still playing, Ron Francis back in the day. So, lacing it up against those guys in my first game. And really, outside of the knowing that we played against the Carolina Hurricanes, I don't remember a whole lot from that game other than the fact that, I hit the ice with Tampa, and, that first opportunity of playing in the NHL was a dream come true. And from that point on, I really got back to trying to earn it every day of, earning your next start, earning your next opportunity, earning your next game. And, I look back fondly on my career, but it was great to get my start in Tampa with those guys.
You go on to you're playing in two original six markets, the Rangers and the Canadians. I know it's the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League podcast. If I don't ask about being a member of the Montreal Canadiens, they'll fire me, Gordy. What was it like to throw on the red, white, and blue of the Montreal Canadiens?
Yeah, well, again, I looked at the teams that I was able to suit up for in the NHL. Whether it was Tampa, we were a young team, and hockey in Tampa was pretty new back then. And you're known as oh, you play ice hockey for the Lightning, and that was about the extent of it. And so you go to the New York Rangers, and then you play, and then everybody's a New York Ranger. Outside of Mark Messier and Brian Leetch, probably at the time that were, the stars in New York City, everybody else was really well treated. And, I look back at some of those experiences. And then you go to the Montreal Canadiens and just, I remember my first game with the Montreal Canadiens was a Saturday night against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Hockey Night in Canada, and just the buzz in the city and, what that meant in the community. And, growing up, around the Montreal Canadiens and being a fan, playing in the Bell Center on a Saturday night was something that was really special as well. So, Montreal, they knew you as a player, but not only did they know you, they knew that you played 4.5 minutes the night before, and you're -1, and you probably lost your fight. So they were the fans were pretty savvy in Montreal. They still are, and it's not just hockey in Montreal; it's pop culture, and I think it's it's well deserved. It's a big part of the community there, and there's tons of fans not only in Quebec but around the world for the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, there'd be absolutely no pressure in that. If you grew up as a Montreal Canadiens fan, you played like in Montreal versus Toronto, Hockey Night in Canada, and on the road hockey games your entire life. So it was nothing different for you, right, Gordy? It's just the same old night at the office.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we were all Toronto Maple Leafs fans as kids as well. So I remember Wendell Clark was my favorite player growing up, and wore number 17 in junior hockey with all the teams I played on. Was always number 17 for Wendell Clark, and our family dog was named Wendell. So it's between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens, there's a bit of a war back and forth between family members. But I remember watching the Montreal Canadiens on TV often as a kid, and to be able to just lace them up and put on that sweater was something that's always going to be special to me.
What was it that made you a Wendell Clark fan?
Well, obviously, loved the way he played. He was your prototypical power forward, and he was coming down the wing and he was letting the slap shots go, and he was stepping up for his teammates, and always willing to drop the gloves and stand up for against the opposition through big body checks. So he was an exciting player to watch. When you look at the level of talent in the league back then, he was one of those top players in our league that in the National Hockey League that people could look up to. So it was easy for me. I loved the style of play that he played. I tried to emulate him as a player, and it was pretty easy to look up to Wendell Clark.
Transition from your playing career, your first job as a head coach, you're coaching the Summerside Western Capitals. Um, Going into that game, again, it's opening week, so I'm going to that war story. What was the nerves like for you, becoming a head coach of a hockey team as opposed to being one of the boys?
Yeah, well, that was a decision that was made with I was playing hockey. I tried out with the New York Islanders that season. Went back, played over in Sweden that year, and I finished the year with with a bit of a shoulder injury again. And that summer, that off season, I met with a doctor in Halifax named Bill Stanish, and Bill had, at that point, had said basically it's your third operation in the last few years on the same shoulder. So it was time to, think about your next steps. So I had a great conversation with my wife, Louise, and she's always been a big supporter of, of my career and been there every step of the way. So we had young children at the time and going through the rehab of my shoulder and waiting to hopefully find another contract. The opportunity presented itself with the Summerside Western Capitals. And, I got to think, whether it's Gerard Gallant, who's coached there, Doug McLean, Dave Cameron. There's been quite a few guys that have got their start with the Summerside Western Capitals. So heading into game one for me, I always felt like I had I recognized it as a great opportunity to start my coaching career and, to be able to be named head coach at a young age, at the junior A level in the Maritimes was exciting for me. And I took full advantage of it. I love their group. I like the way that we played. I like the players that I coach and still have a lot of great relationships with the people that were involved with it way back then.
What's the biggest lessons you learned that season about being a coach?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's, you got to be all in. I think that, coming from a player's perspective, now as a coach, we call it coming to the dark side a little bit, but the hours that good coaches put into their work and their craft is something that, that I had to learn. And, coming into it, I was lucky. I was fortunate enough to be able to do it full time. So, I had young kids that weren't in school yet. My family was really supportive of me. My wife was really supportive of the opportunity. And, so I really dove in head first. So whether it was spending, your mornings and evenings at the rink, looking for, those tactical opportunities or just working, connecting with your players. I think that was, for me, I think those were some of the learning lessons for me and how important it is to connect with your players and how important it is to give them a plan to be successful collectively. And, putting time into your craft is important. And I think those couple seasons with the junior A program really helped me.
You get up to the Charlottetown Islanders, then PEI Rocket. You start building there. What do you take away from your Rocket experience?
Well, just to get that call after winning a Ken Cup Building Supplies Championship in Junior A hockey, I think it was called back then. So won a championship in Charlottetown, and lucky enough that with Summerside, and lucky enough the phone rang in Charlottetown, and that was my next opportunity. So I got to thank the Savard family, Serge Savard Senior, Serge Savard Junior. Actively involved owners of the PEI Rocket, and they gave me that opportunity. Serge Savard Jr. gave me that opportunity to be the head coach in Charlottetown, and I'll always thank him for that opportunity there. And it's funny, we had a conversation about who I wanted to bring possibly over from our team in Summerside, and I'll always look back. And there's one player who's still playing now. His name's Alex Gallant, and I always tell a story about Alex Gallant. Alex Gallant played in the league. Smaller guy, pretty feisty, well known on PEI, comes from a great family. His brothers all played, his father played, and just one of those younger guys that stuck around with me. And I look now, he played with us in Charlottetown, played with us in Summerside, and now he's gone on to have an amazing career. He's been playing in the American League for over 10 years. So, some of those stories, my first couple of years in Charlottetown are ones that I remember well.
And then it's off to Russia. KHL. What's what's some of the differences you would find, and what's some of the things that I guess transitioning from North American to Russian hockey?
Yeah, well, the one thing that was really what I thought when I got the job, and I remember having conversations with the organization. I spent time over there, came back, won the job, accepted the offer to go get across, and I remember having conversations in preparation for the season and saying, "Oh, geez." I couldn't tell if they were talking about a player, talking about a city, or a name of a hockey team. So I said, I got my work cut out for me. So I remember having a couple conversations with some of the coaches that have worked internationally, and ultimately everything that came back was just hockey is hockey. So, do what you do. So I went over, I hired my assistant coach, video coach back then, a guy named Dylan Besson, who's been with me. He's with me with the regiment. He was my video coach. And we sat and we cut film. We watched games in the KHL. We spent all our evenings watching games, four or five games from each team, and cutting them. And it gave us a little bit of insight on how the game was played. And we developed a playbook for our team and how we had to play to be successful. And coming as a younger coach and playing and coaching against some of the top coaches in the world for national teams, and whether it was in different countries and throughout Russia was a really good experience for myself.
What's it like coaching professionally compared to the pure development that you have with junior hockey?
Well, I don't think there's a ton in, of difference from a coaching perspective. I think, ultimately, I think it's managing the athlete. Pro hockey players, they want to know that you can help them, right? That's where the buy-in is there. So it's they got to know that you're prepared. They got to know that you can help them and help the team be successful. And I think building those relationships based on that is really important in pro hockey, with my experience. And then, in junior hockey, it's really about supporting the players. It's really about, driving their development, putting a good product on the ice, but having a good plan for these guys daily. And not only is there's a level of support from their performance on the ice, but, our league does such an amazing job for these players, with their education. And, if school starts at 1 o'clock, then, kids are in the classroom at 1 o'clock, so we backfill in from there. So school's a priority for all the teams in our league, and it's an amazing opportunity there. So we're supporting our players in their billet homes. We're supporting our players, in the classrooms and in the community, and then ultimately on the ice.
In the KHL, what are some of the more memorable rinks and more memorable experiences you've had on the road within that league?
Well, I mean, there's so many great experiences. I remember our first trip to play against the Red Army in Moscow, and players like Radulov, Alexander Radulov, were part of the Red Army at that point, and just the sheer level of professionalism and of history of that hockey club. And then you look at the teams like St. Petersburg, Russia. So they back then they had players like Datsuk was playing. They had Kovalchuk. They had, just to name a few of the players, Gusev and Shipashov, some of the top elite Russian players. So playing against that kind of talent's always been, it challenges yourself as a coach, and just traveling. I remember one trip that we left Zagreb, Croatia, where my team was based, and just traveling to the far east of Russia. It was an 11-hour time change and a 12-hour flight, and we had to get out and play. So there's some real challenges in that environment as well. So just the life experience of being over there in that league, whether it's in Russia, whether it was in Finland, Slovakia, Kazakhstan, China, real good opportunity for myself and my family to be part of it, and some great experiences not only in those places but in Minsk, Belarus as well.
And now the journey's taking you back to here to the Q, and you're now in Newfoundland. What's the transition to Newfoundland been like for you and the family?
Well, I've been really lucky to be able to curve my career path closer to home over the last few seasons. And that's been important for me because, with my wife and my three boys, we're a close family. And my oldest son, Jack, he's been a member of our staff for the last 3 seasons as a scout. And, he's coming over to Newfoundland this year as part of our hockey operations, and real good opportunity for him and for me to be able to share that with him. And then my middle son, Ryan, he's playing in Bay Como this year, for the Drakkar. So great opportunity there. And my youngest son, Sean, he's at Stansted College. He's a 2010, and, he's heading into his draft year. So lots of hockey going on. So, busy household, nice to be close to home over the last few seasons and in St. John's here. So, and then with my wife, she's extremely busy, and we all appreciate her efforts, as a hockey family. So, we're excited about St. John's. We're excited about the community, and ultimately being involved with the Q is something that we're really proud of, whether it's, as a scout, as a player, as a future draft pick, or as a coach, general manager. So it's kind of a family affair.
Yeah, it was a great pregame moment. The photo of you and Ryan last season. What was it like looking across the ice and seeing your son against you?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty special. He's someone that's wanted to do this and do it his way from day one, and whether it was his draft year and where he got selected, and then moving on from there and making the decision to go to Stansted College, which was a great decision for him and the family over the last couple seasons, and the experience and opportunity that was provided there, and now being able to make the jump after working with the NCAA and getting a scholarship there, and now coming to junior hockey. He's thrilled about it. It was great to coach against him. It was probably one of my first opportunities to actually coach against one of my kids, because if I'm not watching them, I'm usually coaching them. So being able to coach against your own son was something that was a little bit different, but it was a great moment. And, I was really, really proud of him and really happy for him and the family. But, ultimately we were happy with, in Bathurst with walking away with the win, though, which was kind of important for me with a little bit of bragging rights.
Yeah, you can't let that W slide out the door. In
No, exactly.
well, and you'll be looking for a couple more with Newfoundland. Now, before we started the interview, I had to ask because I read that during your time in St. John, there was a sit down where you went around the room and you all talked about things that um, you wouldn't expect your teammates to know about you. And I thought it was that you played guitar with on stage with Bon Jovi, but you corrected me. You've got some musical talent, Gordy. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I wouldn't call it talent. I just, probably an opportunity that presented itself. I remember I was playing junior hockey for the Quebec Ramparts, and it was the first season of the Quebec Ramparts and their return, and lots of buzz about the hockey team there. And I remember being captain of that team, and what an honor it was in my last year junior. And we went out that night. There was a concert at the Coliseum that night, and it was Brian Adams, and we were sitting side stage with a bunch of our guys on our team: Simon Gagne, Eric Chouinard, Kurt Johnson, Nick Bilodeau, just to name a few. And um, Brian Adams had this bit in his concerts where he would look out into the crowd and invite somebody on to sing. And we're all standing there waving our hands, and he said, "Hey, how about you with the red hair? Jump up." So I jumped up, and we had quick introduction on the stage, and he knew that I was a hockey player, and that so I introduced myself to the crowd. It was lots of fun there, and then he asked me which song I wanted to sing, and I went on with Summer of '69. So kind of the rest is history. I was lucky or fortunate enough to be able to know the words, or at least remember the words, and and from that point on, we kind of did the song, and people in Quebec City like to remind me of those days back then when I jumped up on stage. So great memory of my time in Quebec.
Summer of '98, I guess, would have been the apropos. I know Spider gave me the heads up that you've been you've watched a lot of concerts with Spider over the years. Andrew Spider McNeil, of course, the trainer, or excuse me, equipment guy for the Islanders. Can't wait to see Spider on the road again. Um, I got to ask you for concert wise, what was your favorite concert you've been to? The concert you want to go to, and a concert that you will never get to but wish you could?
Jeez, that's some good questions there. I've been fortunate enough to travel, and with hockey, you try to slip into the rinks and catch as many concerts as you can. And, I've been able to see quite a few good ones. And I've always enjoyed a good concert. I think my favorite concert probably would have been the Tragically Hip at the Bell Center. Remember seeing them. Just I'm a big Tragically Hip fan, and I remember that venue in particular was the first time seeing them in such a large venue. So it was a great concert. And I remember playing for the New York Rangers, and the owner came in one game and he handed us 2 tickets, and we went down front row seats to the Rolling Stones at MSG. So that was a pretty good event for myself. So I and my wife, we were actually handed 2 tickets and saw the Rolling Stones at front row at MSG. So that was pretty exciting as well. A concert I would really like to see. I've missed them a few times. I think would be the Foo Fighters. It's one of my favorite bands. Really love their stuff, and just the way that they play, and to really think about it, a concert that I'd never see, but I'd always really would have liked to see. It's probably one of my dad's favorite singers, and someone that we grew up listening to a little bit, and someone who's timeless is Elvis Presley. It would have been something to see Elvis in his prime, and what that looked like.
Elvis in his prime is a great pick. That is a very, very solid pick. Gordy, you've had some great picks over the years. Looking forward to seeing the regiment on the ice, and can't wait to have you on Eastlink as well. Very excited to see the Newfoundland Regiment up close and personal. Best of luck this season, and looking forward to a lot of great hockey coming out of Newfoundland, and you guys setting the tone for the next couple of years.
Well, thanks, Mavs. Thanks for having me on the show. And, right across the league to all the fans, let's have a great season.
The Milwaukee Brewers currently have the best record in baseball, and you may ask yourself, Naps, how are you going to stay up to date with the Brewers on their run to their eventual World Series? Well, thankfully, with the Eastlink TiVo Stream app, I can watch it on the go. In fact, I can watch a whole lot of things on the go. See there? Not just Brewers baseball, but all the channels from my lineup with Eastlink, got them on my phone. So that's how I'm going to be able to keep an eye on the Brewers on their run to a eventual World Series title. While in the rinks and the fields, providing you with all the great community sports on Eastlink Community TV. I'll be using that Eastlink TiVo Stream app. Hey, do I got MASH on right now? Let's see. Season 2, The Trial of Henry Blake. Oh, Klinger. So as you can tell, the sun is setting that way because the natural light is starting to die. I didn't want to set up a light yet. I got the ring light here, but that is going to do it for us tonight on the Around the Maritime podcast on the Q. Thanks again to Gordy Dwire for joining me, as well to Jeremy Boucher for hopping aboard. You can catch Jeremy Boucher on the Moncton Wildcast, and you can catch Gordy Dwyer behind the bench of the Newfoundland Regiment this week as they take on the Moncton Wildcats, and we are off and running with the Q season. You will see me on Friday Night Hockey. That is coming up. It's going to be the Charlottetown Islanders and the Halifax Mooseheads. And then following week, we are in Halifax for the Mooseheads. That's our first trip to Scotiabank Center. Can't wait for it here on with Eastlink Friday Night Hockey. And this leads in to the program on the 10 and the 610. So very exciting there. But thanks again for listening. And don't forget to like, comment, or share. And subscribe, I guess. And also, hey, you can tweet at me at Eastlink Maps what you think. And thanks for watching. And thanks for listening to Around the Maritimes, the official English podcast of the QMJHL.